Many people in the room who don't know Mervyn Singer, let me tell you that he's the first author of the new sepsis definitions. So by now we should be very honored to have you here as a guest. And also, apart from being a very good clinician, he's a renowned researcher looking into sepsis, really basic mechanisms, and just a couple of minutes ago he shared with me some very interesting results concerning ways how to modulate the response to anoxia and dysoxia. Maybe now we can talk about oxygen in depth even more. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much indeed. Hi. Lovely introduction. He can be my age, 10%. Great pleasure to be here. Lovely to come back to Hamburg. I'd like to think of myself as the fifth Beatle. Yeah. The Beatle that got away. You know, I think all we need is love. I think in the sort of crazy world we're living in today, I think even more so. But perhaps I'll add just a little bit of oxygen, but not too much. Okay, let's start with a bit of history. I love history because the older I get, the more I look back and the more I realise that somebody's thought of it 50, 100, 200 years ago, and we just reinvented the wheel. This is Joseph Priestley. He was an English priest who basically is credited with the discovery of oxygen. He wasn't. A Swedish guy called Scheele got there first, but Scheele committed the biggest crime in science. He was slow to report. So Priestley got in about a year or two beforehand, and you can see what he wrote from the Greek: a strength and vivacity of the flame of a candle in this pure air. It may be conjectured that it may be peculiarly salutary, helpful to the lungs in certain morbid cases when common air wouldn't be sufficient to carry off the putrid effluvium, that's the nasty mess, fast enough. Let's wind the clock forward. British Medical Journal, 1892. The use of oxygen and strychnine in pneumonia. I won't go to strychnine, but these lovely, beautifully named people, Lord Brunton and Marmaduke Prickett, said, it's self-evident that if we can increase the oxygenating power of the air inhaled by our patients, where the breathing surface of the lungs diminished, we may afford great benefit and in some cases save lives. And they gave a number of case studies. One was a priest, aged about 40, a hard-working clergyman, was attacked with influenza, pneumonia of the right base. On that Sunday morning, we found him completely unconscious, moribund, his face livid, sort of blue-purple, his skin cold, sweaty, clammy, loud mucus rattles accompanying every breath. It occurred to Dr. Brunton that inhaling oxygen might be useful. In about 15 to 20 minutes, his colour became less livid, less purple, less blue, though he was still completely unconscious. So what did they do? They went away and had a cup of tea and came back 2 hours later. And we found an extraordinary transformation had taken place. He was perfectly conscious, his colour quite healthy, and he expressed himself as feeling comfortable and well. Wow. Around the same time, Sir William Osler, who's attributed as the father of modern medicine, he in his famous textbook wrote, it's doubtful whether it does actually help to give oxygen in pneumonia. Personally, when I'm called to see such a case, if I see the oxygen cylinder at the bedside, I feel the prognosis to be extremely grave, serious. It does sometimes seem to give transitory, transient, temporary relief and to diminish the cyanosis. It's harmless. EP. Exhibition, the administration is very simple and the process need not be at all disturbing to the patient. Let's wind the clock forward now. This is John Scott Haldane, who was a very famous English physiologist, worked from Oxford. And here, British Medical Journal, 1917, he wrote, It's well known that giving oxygen produces at least temporary benefit where there's interference with respiratory or circulatory function. But sufficient attention hasn't yet been paid either to what precise benefit may be expected by giving oxygen or how it can best be administered. And this was 100 years ago, he said, and we still don't know. So my questions are, is oxygen good for you? Is it safe? And it is a drug. I think we need to consider it as a drug. And there are many pharmacological applications of oxygen. And again, I won't go through all of these now, but they're all reported in the literature to be beneficial. This multi-centre study came from France a few years ago in the New England Journal. High-flow oxygen in acute hypoxemic respiratory failure, and the patients either got face mask oxygen, high flow using the octave flow system, or BiPAP, and they found, in terms of need for intubation, in terms of survival, the high flow system with the octave flow attached gave the benefit. Maybe, going back to Hafez's point, maybe it was a little bit of CPAP that was beneficial as well. So there are some positive studies. But on the other hand, if you go to the animal literature, there's a hell of a lot of studies showing harm, oxidant damage, etc., etc. So you have a very mixed literature. Even in patients, in healthy volunteers, there's a long history of the effects of oxygen. Lancet, 1964. Colin Dollery, who later became Professor Sir Colin Dollery, looked at the retinal circulation before and after giving oxygen, and he found vasoconstriction. So you can see here, if I get my pointer out, you can see here the microcirculation was constricted down by that oxygen drug. We were hearing from Jean-Louis about Swan and Gans. This is a paper they did in 1972 using the Swan-Ganz catheter and giving oxygen to patients after or with and without coronary artery disease. And the cardiac output did go down. These patients vasoconstricted, the cardiac index fell, coronary sinus blood flow fell, and blood pressure went up in those with coronary artery disease. And they measured things like coronary artery resistance, blood flow, etc. And this was compromised by giving oxygen. Ooh. I did this shock horror systematic review a few years ago, but it was more of a general review article. And essentially, when you look at the literature, I think this is the problem. Are you giving a high level of oxygen to correct hypoxemia to an appropriate level of normoxemia? Or are you causing hyperoxia by giving too much oxygen? And there's not clarity, or people haven't made that distinction, so we're trying to make that distinction in this paper. There are preclinical studies showing important anti-inflammatory effects, both with normobaric and hyperbaric oxygen. I won't go any further into hyperbaric, but as I mentioned earlier, lots and lots of toxicity, direct toxicity to the lung, mucosal inflammation and pneumonitis, obviously neonates and their eyes, reactive oxygen species production, vasoconstriction, all well recognised. Certainly a few years ago, and there still aren't many trials out there looking at the benefit or harm of oxygen in certain conditions. And clearly, and I'll show you a few recent studies, some observational data, that does suggest we need to worry about it more than perhaps we traditionally have done. And clearly, we need better evidence. But again, go back 100 years to Haldane. He acknowledged that when you need oxygen, it's evidently desirable to continue administration over long periods. However, he recognised in dog models that giving pure oxygen at normal atmospheric pressures induces a pneumonia. I think we now call it a pneumonitis in inflammation of the lung pretty rapidly. So after several days, you got these often fatal pneumonitis. You even got this by a mixture containing only 80% oxygen. It's evidently desirable, therefore, to keep the oxygen percentage as low as possible during long administrations and to know roughly how much of FiO2 the patient is breathing. 100 years ago. This was an interesting study that came out from the United States. Kilgannon and colleagues, they looked at patients who had survived cardiac arrest, and they looked at the first blood gas taken in the intensive care unit after they were transferred there. So clearly some patients will be normoxemic, some because they may have bad lungs, heart failure, whatever, they may be hypoxemic, but some will be hyperoxic. And you can only ever be hyperoxic because of a nitrogenic overdose of oxygen. And what they found here was the patients who were hyperoxic on their first blood gas did much worse compared to those who were normoxic. Ronaldo Bologna then went to his database in Melbourne, and if you read their conclusion, among patients admitted, so they essentially tried to replicate the same study, but they said hyperoxia did not have a robust or consistently reproducible association with mortality. We urge caution in implementing policies of deliberate decreases in FiO2 in these patients. That's the abstract, the conclusion. I've got a bad habit of actually I'll try and read the paper, especially in the sort of Facebook, Twitter generation we now live in. You see like a one-sentence review of a paper, but people don't actually generally read beyond the abstract, let alone the methods or the results. If we look at the results of his study, 12,000 patients, hypoxia, normoxia, hyperoxia, mortality, 60% if you were hypoxemic, 47% if you were normoxemic, 59% mortality if you were hyperoxic, which is a bit contradictory. And even there, on his the logistic regression analyses, hyperoxia versus normoxemia, a 50% increase in mortality. So I can't quite work out. I've tried to ask him, why did these results contradict what you wrote? And he goes, yeah. With Elisa Gamiani and some other of the Italian colleagues, we did that systematic review I was mentioning earlier and found at the time, this is a few years ago, 17 studies in a variety of different clinical situations. Patients being ventilated after arrest, stroke, traumatic brain injury. The overall message is there was a trend, you can see here not quite statistically significant, but a trend to worse outcomes after cardiac arrest, stroke, brain injury. However, we added the caveat, the limitation that there was significant heterogeneity in these studies. So it's a suggestion, but we can't take this as gospel. This recently came out. Haynes has showed briefly, or the reference to this paper. So 3 Dutch ICUs, 14,400 patients, 295,000 blood gas analyses. So radiometer or whoever will be very rich from 3 Dutch ICUs. And you can see here the mean PaO2 was related, this is an adjusted in-hospital death, but you can see here the higher the mean PaO2 increased, the higher the risk of dying. Time in hyperoxia, again, the longer the patient remained hyperoxic, in hours, the more likely they were to die. Again, a retrospective review of data, adjusted for mortality, etc. But still, makes an interesting point. If you go, I'll diverge away into the wound infection story, post-operative wound infection. There have been lots of trials giving oxygen and seeing if it works or not. So you had this big paper in the New England Journal, patients either got 30 or 80% oxygen post-operatively. And if you look here, the the infection went from 11% on 30%, halved when the patients got 80% oxygen. So there, it was good for you. On the other hand, this paper a few years later in JAMA showed the complete opposite. If you were on 35% oxygen, you had 11.3% infection rates. If you went to 80% oxygen, it now more than doubled. So you've got two very conflicting outcomes. What do you do? Repeat it. Let's have a third study. So we had a third study. This is the proxy study, 2009 in JAMA. And now they compared 80 and 30%, and basically there was no difference. However, both in mortality or in pneumonia rates. However, they actually very interestingly did a long-term follow-up, which got published a few years ago in Anesthesia and Analgesia. And what you see there is there's this interesting separation after about a year. So the mortalities were very similar in those who perioperatively had got 30 or 80. But after a year, you've got this separation. And it was statistically significant. The patients getting the high PO2 at the time of surgery did worse. Why? Well, they broke it down into patients having cancer and non-cancer surgery. The non-cancer surgery, zero difference, zero impact. The cancer surgery, you have that separation. Whether or not, I don't know, whether or not it's perhaps related to giving the high oxygen at the time maybe triggered metastatic spread. Don't know. But again, it's a very interesting observation. Myocardial infarction. I mentioned the study from Swan and Gans years ago. This is a bigger study that came out a few years ago in Circulation. 441 patients with confirmed ST elevation myocardial infarction, randomized to either get room air or 8 litres per minute of oxygen. And they found that those who got the oxygen had a higher level of mean creatinine kinase, as shown here, more recurrent myocardial infarction, more arrhythmias, and a bigger infarct size at 6 months. Doesn't look very good for oxygen. This is a pilot study done from the Australasian Lancet's critical care group. Again, they randomised patients to try and keep the pulse oximetered oxygen around the sort of 90 to 94 mark, or 97 to 100. Again, the numbers weren't huge, but they found the 90-day mortality in those who were managed conservatively at the lower end of the oxygen sort of range. It wasn't significant, but there was a trend. In those patients with PF ratios less than 300, it was actually statistically, again, it was sort of 0.49, not quite statistically significant, but a halving in the mortality rate. They're repeating that study in obviously bigger numbers. Patients mentioned this paper from Massimo Girardis and colleagues, and I had a little help with them. And again, it was a single-centre study from Italy, from Modena. It was open label, obviously, you're giving oxygen. They enrolled patients staying more than 72 hours, but not ARDS, that was the exclusion criteria. And they were randomised to either keep the PaO2 between 70 and 100, or the saturations, if you didn't have an arterial line in place, between 94 and 98%. You weren't allowed to pre-oxygenate before, like suctioning, before transferring the patient, etc. However, if the saturations did drop, then you could intervene, but you weren't allowed to preemptively pre-oxygenate. That happens a lot in an intensive care patient stay. In the conservative arm, they allowed a permissive degree of hyperoxia, up to 150, or saturation up to 100%. Obviously, you don't know PaO2 if that's 100. They had a variety of sort of logistic issues, so they didn't fully enroll the planned number, and they lost some mainly because they left within 72 hours or died. But by and large, they did pretty well with actually keeping to the protocol. So up the top here, the median time-weighted PaO2, those in the conventional group were generally on the high side, those in the conservative group were generally having lower values of PaO2. Likewise, with the FiO2, you've got an increased lower levels of FiO2 in those managed conservatively. So they were pretty good at actually keeping them separated. And there was an outcome difference. Okay, single centre, etc. But there was an outcome difference, which actually turned out to be statistically significant. And secondary outcomes, shock, liver failure, bacteremia, were reduced in the patients where you didn't give them too much oxygen. They looked at new organ failure development, new infection, ICU mortality, and you can see that that sort of value seems to be associated with the best outcomes. Again, the caveats for this study: it is a single centre, it is an open label study, there is a big treatment effect. Can that be reproduced in a multi-centre trial? So clearly, that's what's needed. I'll finish with this study. This came from France. A multi-centre trial, 442 patients with septic shock, and there was some animal data that giving hyperoxia may actually be beneficial. So therefore they randomised patients to either keep their saturations in a sort of conventional range between 88 and 95%, or to flood them with oxygen, give them 100%, for 24 hours. Clearly they hadn't read the Haldane work from 100 years ago. They had to stop the trial early because of harm. The hyperoxia group, so that was a recommendation by the Data Monitoring Committee. The hyperoxia group had a 8% absolute increase in mortality, more critical illness weakness, and more atelectasis. So, in summary, I think oxygen's clearly important as a drug, but the problem is it's a double-edged sword. It's got benefit on the one hand, but potential harm on the other. I think the evidence base is still limited, it's increasing, but it does suggest that perhaps hyperoxemia isn't such a good idea, and we need to focus on what we're drowning our patients with, or poisoning our patients with. So, perhaps controlled oxygen therapy should just be as important as everything else we do. Norepinephrine dosing, sedation dosing to a level, etc. Perhaps we should aim for this sort of range, maybe even lower. But certainly when I do my clinical work or on my rounds, I get upset if I see a saturation above 98. Leave them alone, put it down. And the nurses know. I'll finish there. Thank you very much for listening.